This is a sports catastrophe production.
Hey there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Dodman welcoming you to another sports catastrophe birthday boy. And the birthday boy for today, December the 4th, he's now 64 years old, is a legendary closer. He had the major league record for career saves until Trevor Hoffman beat it, and then Mo Rivera beat that. All that. Lee Smith was actually elected to the Hall of Fame in 2019, which was great. He was an intimidating figure on the mound, being 6'6", with a fastball which hit 95 on the gun. Anyway, he looked pretty good and all that. He was a Cub and Cardinal legend and played for a few other teams, like in between. He played for 8 teams. So Lee Smith was taken in the second round of the 1975 draft by the Cubs. The Cubs were able to get Smith under contract. Smith made his major league debut with the Cubs on September 1st, 1980 against the Braves. He looked pretty good. He would be a good reliever and would be middle relief and all that. So the Cubs in 1982 had strangeness. They had 4 guys who were the closers in a sense. Lee Smith, Willie Hernandez, Bill Campbell, and Dick Tidrow picked up at least 6 saves each, and that's kind of weird and all that. Smith would only make 6 starts in his major league career. Fergie returned to the Cubs for the final 2 seasons of his career in 82 and 83 and helped Lee Smith simplify his delivery, giving him the slider and forkball to work. Smith subsequently led the Cubs in games finished and saves from 83 to 87. And Lee Smith looked good in 83. He actually got some points in the MVP voting. And then in 1984, when the Cubs won their first postseason bid since 1945, Lee Smith did pretty well, saving more than 30 games. He got the save in Game 2, but unfortunately, Lee Smith made that one fatal mistake in Game 4 of that LCS against the Padres. The game was tied 5-5. He would give up a single to Tony Gwynn and then a home run by Steve Garvey that got it to Game 5. And unfortunately, the Cubs lost Game 5, 6-3 to the Padres. Lee Smith was very intimidating and all that. And was great and all that. But by December 1987, he decided to leave the Cubs as the team's career leader in saves and traded to Boston for Al Nipper and Kelvin Girardi. Basically, Girardi was a shell of himself after the 86 World Series. And it helped Boston gratefully. Boston had a terrible bullpen, so they were trying to fix it with getting Lee Smith. All that. He did pretty well, getting Boston to the AL East title with 89 wins in 1988. For the 88 Red Sox against Oakland, that was the only other time Lee Smith had pitched in the postseason. Smith's salary rose to $1.4 million. But his ERA also rose, which was not that great. In the 1980s, he would have 234 saves, considering himself one of the best closers behind Jeff Reardon. The funny thing is that Boston signed Jeff Reardon to a contract in 1989, despite the fact they had Lee Smith. So they had both Lee Smith and Jeff Reardon in 1990. The Bull Sox could only keep one of those guys, so they decided to keep Reardon and traded Lee Smith to St. Louis for Tom Bernansky. It actually worked out. Bernansky was a decent player for Boston. And Smith had a better chance to blossom outside of Boston. Jeff Reardon would not work out well for Boston. They traded him in 92 to the Braves. So Lee Smith put up 47 saves in 91, surpassing the National League record. It would be his first of 4 consecutive seasons having 40 saves or more. He actually finished second in Cy Young voting behind Tom Glavine. That's amazing. Lee Smith was just that good and all that. Lee Smith was an icon. He was the Cardinals' all-time save leader once he left St. Louis. Well, he had 160 saves for the Cardinals until and had the record behind before Jason Isringhausen did that. Smith's 47 saves in an NL season was bested by Rod Beck and Randy Myers 2 years later in 1998, I think. 93, sorry. But in 93, the Yankees needed some pitching, so they got Lee Smith from the Cardinals. Smith did pretty well, picking up 3 saves in 8 innings pitched and 8 appearances for the Yankees. Unfortunately, the Yankees were 11-15 in the month of September, and the Blue Jays drove away with the division title. Smith decided to go for free agency and signed with Baltimore. In his first 12 games, he had 12 saves and didn't give up a run. He still did pretty good for himself. Unfortunately, Lee Smith was known for blowing the AL's chances to win the 94 All-Star game in Pittsburgh by giving up the game-time home run to Fred McGriff, and the AL lost in the 10th. Lee Smith just had a lot of problems. He would go for free agency and sign with California and all that, and he looked pretty good for himself, helping the Angels do well and all that. Unfortunately, Lee Smith faltered after the All-Star game in 95. Him and the Angels, as the Angels were 14-29 in their final 43 games and ended up tied with the Seattle Mariners. And then, of course, the Angels lost to the Mariners in the tiebreaker game to miss the playoffs completely. But Smith did pitch efficiently in September. He had 13 out of 14 save opportunities. That wasn't bad. But it was just the offense. The Angels would keep him for a little bit. But after off-season surgery and the fact that Troy Percival was establishing himself as the Angels closer, Lee Smith would be traded from the Angels to the Reds for Chuck McElroy. Smith would become a setup to the Reds closer Jeff Brantley. All that. That was kind of weird that Lee Smith was not the closer. But Montreal decided to pick him up to be the closer in 97. His last ever appearance was July 2nd, 1997, in that famous 3-game series between the Expos and Blue Jays that was worth the price of admission. Pedro Martinez beating Pat Hankin 2-1 on June 30th, and then Roger Clemens being outdueled by Jeff Juden, of all people, 2-1 on Canada Day 97. He decided to retire July 15th, 97. So he was the pitching coach of the South African baseball team in the 2006 Baseball Classic, but South Africa was 0-3. Smith has 6 kids, 3 from a previous marriage and 3 from his current marriage. All that. He looked good to be in the Hall of Fame, but the Hall of Fame really didn't like closing pitchers and all that. Despite that, only Hoyt Wilhelm and Roy Fingers, who were relievers, were in the Hall of Fame. But during the time Smith actually appeared on the Hall of Fame balloting, Dennis Eckersley, Bruce Sutter, and Goose Gossage were added. It was just terrible. But thankfully, there was a committee called the Today's Game Committee that talks about decent players from the 80s and 90s. And with that, Lee Smith and Harold Baines were elected through that. So they got to be in the Hall of Fame in 2019. Lee Smith was on 15 years on the ballot. His best score was a 50% in 2012, his 10th attempt. So he just wasn't there. But thankfully, though, he did better. So, yeah, Lee Smith was an icon and all that. So, yeah, good on him for being an intimidating closer and all that. Oh, yeah, and I forgot to mention Lee Smith was the one who blew that save in 1989 when the Jays came back from 10-0 down to take the lead over the Red Sox in that famous game, the last game before the Jays entered their new home of the Sky Dome against the Brew Crew. Boston did force extra innings, but Toronto won in the 12th. So anyway, Thanks for watching. Adieu.